Now, to our speaker, the handsome guy over there, brother. His son came in to listen to that story again and again and again. His name is Roald Knutson. Roald has been a volunteer special deputy for the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office for 34 years. First with the Water Patrol, currently with the Communications Division. While with the Water Patrol, he was on the underwater recovery team for 20 years as an advanced school diver. He assisted in the recovery of many bodies, cars, guns, even on top of that. You know, the best thing you can say about somebody is he's a great guy, and he really is. Let's give him a hand. Bring him up. Stay away from him. That information. Yeah.
Got a couple, at least 2 experienced divers and instructors here in the audience, so they'll keep me on my toes. And, you're going to keep me on time. Watch it. With the microphone. Okay. In January 1979, I became a volunteer special deputy for Hennepin County Sheriff's Office Water Patrol. For 25 years, I worked 8 to 12 hours every other Saturday, patrolling all the water in Hennepin County. Rivers, lakes, mudholes, my boat in the summer and my snowmobile in the winter. Sometimes we'd be out in a snowmobile in the middle of the lake in a snowstorm, but we'd still be in touch with the office by radio. I've got 14,000 volunteer hours so far and more to come, starting with the Communications Division. In 2004, I switched to the Communications Division where my basic qualification is that I'm a ham radio operator. My license is N0PDB. I'm a general class. Next January, I will have completed 35 years, and these stars are 1 star every 5 years volunteer service. And all that time, we never get paid a dime, but they gave us a lot of nice plaques. I got a nice plaque here. It shows I was 20 years with the dive team. That's a nice looking plaque, isn't it? That cost some money. In 1984, I became scuba certified and joined the underwater recovery unit. And today I'll be relating some of my experiences in scuba diving with the Sheriff's Office. During the next 20 years, we did a lot of training. We're I think the most highly trained scuba team in the Midwest. We trained twice a month, year-round, and we earned many certificates. I got hours and hours and hours of wallet cards here from training. One of our most interesting training sessions was this one. The 1st Special Forces Group Airborne from Fort Lewis, Washington came here for a week. And we had a whole schedule here of training for a whole week with that Special Forces team. And they taught us some things, but I think we taught them a lot of things too, because most of their diving was not in zero visibility water and fast moving water. But they used chest packs, which recirculated their own air so that when they dropped out of a helicopter into the water, they could swim a couple of miles without leaving any bubble trails. That's the way they were diving. We never had that kind of equipment. All ours was tanks on our backs. I'm going to tell you about some of the stories, some of the incidents we were on. This first one was at the Minnesota River, where Highway 100 goes all the way down and hits the Minnesota River. There used to be an old Savage Bridge there, but it's been taken out. Well, a car driven by a 17-year-old female was found partially submerged in the Minnesota River with the car bumper sticking out of the ice. Our divers checked out the car and it was empty. The Savage Bridge had been closed for car traffic for many years, but the car apparently went through the heavy road barricade. There were big steel tubes this big that she drove her car right straight through. And then the car went through, drove through the ice and into the water. since she wasn't in the car, we spent the next 2 days walking the area around there where a lot of deer hunters and bow hunters, and we couldn't find her. So then we went back to the river and started diving beyond the car under the ice. And then, of course, we found her. She'd been thrown out of the car through a broken window. We found her about 30 feet from the car under the ice. We brought her back to the riverbank, and then we had to sit there, 2 of us, in the water with her for a whole hour waiting for the medical examiner to come. And that's cold when you're in ice water and you can't move. So we kept sticking our fingers in cups of hot coffee. That was a cold wait. Well, that was the missing gal. They had posters all over. And we found her, but she was not alive. Henley Drive on Minnetonka, January 23rd, in 2003. So we're just about at that anniversary. The frozen body of a teenage girl was found Wednesday morning about 7:45 a.m. atop the ice by a building contractor. Her tracks indicated that she had walked for about 100 yards and then crawled the rest of the way in near zero temperature before succumbing. She was found all curled up on the ice, tried to stay warm, but she froze to death on top of the ice. Judging from the tire tracks, it appeared that the couple's car had gone into the open water and skidded into the open water at midnight. And we were there all day taking my turns at diving. I was sheltered in a portable canvas fish house with all my gear on and waiting to do my 3rd dive. It was cold. The wind in this canvas fish house, the wind was so strong that it blew the fish house with me in it and all my gear on 6 feet across the ice. It was cold. The warmest place that day was in the water under the ice. It took several days to get the couple's car out of the lake because conditions were so rough. The weak and shifting ice was treacherous and the temperature remained near zero. Before finding the couple's car, we found another truck that had gone into the same hole a few days earlier. And last week, it was in the paper, there were 7 cars that had gone through the ice in Minnetonka just in January. Well, here's the whole article about the couple that drowned under the ice. Well, I better tell you about diving is dangerous. It is a dangerous sport. And these instructors here, Jim is an instructor, and he knows he's training his divers to be safe in their sport. In fact, right now he's training one of the fellows who will be in charge of the dive team at Water Patrol. So this was in 1994. 6 of us drove to Florida to go on a pleasure dive. First time I've been on a pleasure dive. Everything else was in the mud in the Mississippi. It was a beautiful day to go scuba diving in the Gulf of Mexico near Pensacola, Florida. It was 75 degrees and the sun was shining. There was very little breeze and only gentle swells in the ocean. Perfect day for diving. We completed our first 1.5 hour dive at 85 feet. We rested on the dive boat for the required 2.5 hours to off-gas the nitrogen built up in our bodies for doing the first deep dive. We were ready for the second dive, which was planned for 85 feet. There were 3 teams of 2 each. My dive buddy Mike could not go down to the second dive because he'd gotten seasick. So I decided to go down in a threesome with Split and Rocky. That was a mistake because one of my rules is you never dive in more than a 2-man team. Well, we'd been down at 85 feet for 22 minutes when my gauge showed 900 pounds. It was time for me to start from the surface. I wasn't monitoring my gauges as closely as I should have. At 30 feet, I felt my last breath, and I looked at my gauge, and I was at 30 feet. I passed out and went back down to 85. My tank was empty. And I dropped down to 85 before I could drop my weight belt, and I fell unconscious, hitting the bottom face first in this full face mask. This is gear that belongs to the sheriff's office. It's a full face AGA mask, and my face filled up this mask when it exploded because of the reverse pressure. This mask has a line to it, 4-wire line, so there's 2-way constant communication between the diver and the tender up above. And and it's got earphones for each ear. That's probably a $1,000 mask, isn't it? And this dive suit here, this red and black dive suit, that's about $900. And when they brought me up to the deck of the dive boat in the Gulf of Mexico, they had to cut that off of me in order to give me proper treatment. Well, Cliff and Rocky, at considerable risk to themselves, came back down to assist me. They released my weight belt, ripped off my mask, and tried to give me air from their spare regulator. They were not successful in this because my face was swollen like a basketball, my eyes stuck out like half oranges, my tongue was sticking out from the reverse pressure. They quickly pulled me to the surface without doing the required safety stops, which put them in great danger. Reaching the surface, they hollered for help from the dive boat, which dragged anchor and came over it immediately. They laid my limp body on the deck and Mike got ready with positive pressure oxygen. As soon as Mike opened my airway by tipping my head back, I started gasping for air and began breathing on my own. From that moment on, I was alert and conscious, but they continued to administer 100% pure O2. The Coast Guard cutter had been called, and they arrived and took me 8 miles back to shore where the helicopter was waiting. I had not been breathing for 4.5 minutes. But that was not really any problem, because you can't damage a Norwegian brain. There was a 30-minute flight at 300 feet back to Pensacola Naval Hospital, where the ER doctors tested me physically, mentally, and neurologically for 2 hours. My only injuries were a severely bruised and swollen face and loss of some peripheral vision. I found out later that my blood had been sucked out of my head back into my scuba tank by the reverse pressure by going back down to 85 feet. I did not need treatment in a hyperbaric chamber, fortunately. I did spend 2 days in the hospital, treating me with steroids to cut down swelling. And the Navy commander at the hospital called it accident a near drowning with severe mask squeeze. I was discharged to Baptist Hospital in Pensacola, where I spent 2 days being treated with oxygen and steroids. Upon discharge from Baptist Hospital, we flew back to Minneapolis. I was wearing sunglasses and Carol's makeup so as not to frighten the other passengers. I do have 11 slides of that accident. We'll show those now. That's we were getting ready to go down on our first dive. This is my wife on the left in the white. And that's grumpy white in the red. And that's the dive boat we went out on. And that owner of that dive boat, a year later, he had a dive accident down there, and they never found his body. He was doing a dive for NASA. Okay? That's my dive buddy and I'm in the blue. After our first dive and waiting for our second dive, we were happy. Sat there for 2.5 hours waiting till off-cast. And we went on the second dive, but that's the Coast Guard cutter that came out to pick me up 8 miles out in the bay. And they met the helicopter for Baptist Hospital, and they tried to go over to a chamber over in Florida, but that was closed down. That's what I looked like after the accident. All of the lines on my face are caused by the reverse pressure of my face filling this mask. Another picture of, this was taken in the hospital by one of my own. This picture, that's how bad I looked 3 days later, after I got home. And maybe it's not the same as I look now, I don't know. And then we went back down to Florida the next year and did a reenactment of the whole dive for Rescue 911. You ever see that show, Rescue 911? They don't produce any more shows, and sometimes you'll see an old issue of it. And of course, I have a tape of it. But the fellow on the right was a stunt diver from Florida, and there's the Coast Guard cutter, the team that brought me back. There's the ambulance crew that picked me up. This is on the reenactment trip back down to Florida 2 years later. They paid me $200 a day for being down there for 8 days. My wife came along, so they paid her $100 a day. And of course, they paid all our hotel expenses and a nice big Lincoln car to drive around in. And I do have, these are the pictures that I made slides of from the accident, if you want to see those later. Okay, enough of the accident. Diving is a dangerous sport, and you've got to follow the rules, and if you don't follow them, something's going to happen. Any questions so far?
How did your dive buddies know that you had fallen back down? Did they see you down?
Yeah, they saw me plummeting back down, and they wondered, what's going on with Roald? And then they came back down and pulled me off the bottom and tried to get my mask off, which was sucked to my face. They finally got it off, but of course I couldn't take any of their spare air because my mouth was full swollen. So the fellow that brought me up was Cliff, who trained me originally, and Cliff said, oh no, here I trained this guy to scuba dive, and now I'm bringing his body up to the wall.
Well,
Yes.
when you say reverse pressure, what exactly is that?
Well, right here, we're at 1 atmosphere of pressure. If you've gone down 33 feet, you're at 2 atmospheres of pressure. 6 feet would be 3 atmospheres. But it gets tighter and tighter as you go down. And the deeper you go, the more pressure there is on your body, and it pushes nitrogen into your bloodstream. All kinds of problems. Yeah. Yes.
How much did this equipment weigh once you got it on?
150 pounds. And then after you get that 150 pounds on, if you're properly weighted, you should be able to just keep your mouth out of the water and breathe. And if you take a breath, you'll go down. If you let it out, or if you let out your breath, you'll go down. You have to be properly weighted so you're neutral in the water, even though you got 150 pounds. That's why we had a tender help us put all the gear on. And then once we're in the water, we're at neutral buoyancy. But you have to be properly weighted to get down. So that was another problem I had. It was my first dive in salt water. So, and first time with a steel tank of nitrox instead of my regular tank. So I was a little off on how much weight I should have had on. I was probably overweight. Any other questions?
Well, do you use the same equipment for freshwater and saltwater?
Yes, I had, for 5 years, I had all county gear in my station wagon, and I used that for every dive, whether it was freshwater, saltwater, river, or lakes. Nobody touched my gear. That was my gear. About $5,000 worth belonged to the county.
Another question. You know, a good friend of mine is a guy for Carver County. Any of the Carver County guys?
No, I don't. I know the Hennepin very closely, because we train twice a month. Oh, and then a few incidents. Powder Park, August 1987. In Powder Park, one time we were diving, and one of our divers bumped into a big bread truck that had been driven into the water. But it's all mud there. We didn't find that bread truck till he bumped into it. But on this day, August 1st, a 22-year-old man went for a swim. Young man, I didn't think he was 19 or 20. Went for a swim about 3 a.m. after he got off of his fast food job. A 14-year-old girl tried to save him, but he grabbed her arm and was pulling her under. She said she had to pry a strip off her and was left with scratches on her arm from where he was pulling at her. Sheriff divers worked for 8 hours groping in the muddy and warm, zero visibility water before finding his body about 50 feet from shore. That was me. Of course, the media is always there. There's a picture of me in the water with the victim's head just coming out of the water. And my buddy Bob in the rubber raft trying to help me get out. One of our other divers quit that day. He was diving and he touched the leg of one of the other divers and thought he had found the body. So we let the family know that we found the body, but we hadn't. I found the body about 2 hours later. He quit the dive team that day. He was freaked out. One day we were diving for a possible drowning victim downtown Minneapolis by Lockton Dam number 1. 2 guys had been standing on our shore fishing. This was in the spring of the year when there was still snow on the ground. Well, one of the men had left to use the telephone, and the other man thought he might have drowned, so he called 911. So here comes the team. Our dive team was arrived, we suited up, we're starting our search. It was early March with snow still on the ground, and one of our divers saw a man lying on the ground in a sleeping bag under a tree. So he went up in to ask if he had observed anything. How long have you been here? 6 this morning or 7 this morning? Did you see anything going on down here? How long have you been here? His answer was, all winter. There are probably about 600-700 people that spend all winter outside in the Minneapolis area. Even when it's this cold. He was a homeless man who stayed outside all winter. This is one of my most memorable dives at the Camden Boat Launch, about 60 persons, Lindale Avenue North. There was a fishing pier there. The young father was fishing from the pier with his daughter. He dropped his knife into the river, so he took off his shoes and pants and jumped into the river to retrieve it. It was deeper than he thought, so he didn't come up. Since I was in Egan riding my horse, it took me a while to get up there, and 2 other divers had already taken their turns and didn't find her. My turn came about 11 p.m. when it was dark with no visibility and a river current. I was swimming an arc pattern, tied off with the line, swimming an arc pattern, going out an extra 5 feet each time you make an arc. And about the fourth arc, I bumped into him. I grabbed him at his upper thigh, and since I had a strong hold on him, I had told my tender to pull us up. Normally, we'd send down a second diver to help bring up the body. When we broke the surface, I found that I had him around the waist, and we were facing each other. His face was white, and his eyes were wide open. I can still see that experience. Double murder in Minnetonka, June 1995. The execution-style killing of 2 men in the underground parking garage of the Lord Fletcher Apartments in Spring Park led to the arrest of 2 drug dealers. 2 guns presumed to have been used in the killings were found by Hennepin County divers 10 days later. 2 suspects were arrested after a nationwide search and great detective work by Captain Rocky Fontana of the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. An apartment resident heard the 2 shots fired at 1:35 a.m. The 2 suspects told investigators that they were at Mystic Lake Casino at that time they were murdered. Viewing a videotape provided by the casino investigators determined that they had arrived there at 2:16 and left at 2:29 a.m. So the detective thought if they got from the murder scene to the casino in 40 minutes, this is the route they must have taken, and they probably went over the Narrows Bridge. Maybe they threw the guns in there. So we went to the Narrows 10 days after the killing. I was the first diver down, and the water was really clear that day. I went right to the 357 caliber pistol on the first dive. It was lying on the sand at 12 feet in clear water. The 6-cylinder chamber contained 2 spent shells, 2 dead drug dealers, and 4 live rounds. 5 days later, we went back with the underwater metal detector and found the 25 caliber pistol 5 feet away. So that I would not have to go to court to testify, having found the gun and the chain of evidence, I called up on my comm line and said, send down Sergeant Chandler, let him take the gun, then he'll have to go to court. Here's a whole article about the 2 drug dealers. Lee Calhoun, on May 10th, 1987, This was kind of sad. A 20-year-old black man waded into the water with his clothes on as his mother watched from shore. He went too far, stepped into a drop-off, and did not return. It was a hot, humid summer day. We drove all afternoon and evening on Saturday, but couldn't find him. The bottom was up and down, 20 feet, 15 feet, 10 feet, up and down. We resumed our search on Sunday when we were all nearing exhaustion. I was on my third dive of the day. Finally, as I was being towed, we had a 16-foot Lumicraft that we put a bar across the bow, and we pulled 3 divers, one in the middle, one on each end of that bar. And we would hold on to that bar, and the boat went backwards and pulled us along so we didn't have to exert ourselves swimming. I was being told, I said, "Dear God, please help us find this young man." First, my line tender hurt me up on the towboat. That was Cliff Schmidt. 10 seconds later, I saw the boy lying on the bottom, the black boy. There was poor visibility. It was just like a ray of sunshine. Came right down there and made his body white. And that's what I saw. There's a newspaper article about that thing. Missing St. Thomas student, November 30th, 1986. He didn't show up at home for Thanksgiving. So the family came up from Chicago and they were searching for him, looking for him, wondering what happened. Well, Hennepin County divers searched a stretch of the Mississippi River about a mile north of Lockton Dam one year after carved parts of a car that may have been the students were found above the river bluff. Friday night, a St. Paul police officer noticed a trail of car parts, including a bumper, trunk lid, pieces of lights, gouged trees, shorts, saplings, tire tracks led in a straight line from St. Clair Avenue over the curb, over the grass, through the trees, and he flew 85 feet out over the river and then down 100 feet without touching any of the trees below the bluff. He was really moving. He must have been traveling at a high rate of speed. When he left the bank, he cleared all the trees and didn't touch again until he hit the Mississippi below. At 11 a.m. the next morning, sheriff's divers suited up while a barge, we had to bring in a barge. You've seen them on the river. This barge came into location, put down 4 feet to stabilize it, and had a big crane on top of the barge. And 2 divers went down to the car, so about 12 feet of water. The river is gouged out at about 9 to 10 feet to allow for the barges to come through. The student driver was still behind the wheel 3 days after he went missing. The 18-year-old's body was brought to shore and the totally destroyed car was lifted onto the barge. It was snowing that day, and we were diving in the Mississippi. I've got all kinds of pictures of that barge and the car being pulled up. How are we doing on time?
What about time?
Here's one that took about 3 years. A small 2-person pedal boat was found empty on Weaver Lake. That's a fairly small lake. It contained only a large half-empty bottle of alcohol. An adult male who lived on the lake was reported missing. We've performed many search dives during the summer and fall, but found nothing. That was a muddy dive too. We were pulled along and zero visibility. The next spring and summer we did more search dives because he still hadn't surfaced. You know, if body goes down, it's going to come up. The longest one we had was about 17 days. This one took 3 years. So since he didn't come up on his own, we surmised that he had disappeared and gone to Mexico. Suicide or disappearance. The next summer, the mystery was solved. The adult male had tied a 50-pound water pump to his ankle using white nylon rope. Well, the pump was sucked into the soft mud bottom and kept his body from surfacing. Finally, his pants rotted away and the billfold floated to the surface, and some juveniles found his billfold. So when they went into the bank to get some of that money changed, we got the story and we found out where they found the billfold, and then we went back down. and found him, still tied to the pump with his body trying to surface. But by that time, he was all waxed up. He was petrified down there. Although you may not believe this, but it's true. I gave a ticket to an airplane one day. I was patrolling Lake Minnetonka when I issued a ticket to a pontoon plane. There are several owners who keep their airplanes at their property on the lake because the lake is so busy on weekends with boat traffic, only one takeoff and one landing are permitted per day on Saturday and Sunday. Well, this pilot whose hangar was at the shore under his house was making multiple landings and takeoffs. So I issued the ticket. I got more stories, but maybe that's enough. Any questions?
Do you have anything to do with the 35W bridge collapse?
Yes, the 35W bridge collapse. I wasn't diving anymore at that time, but I spent 7 days down there using communications with the dive team. Even our dive team, those who were still on the dive team didn't dive because it was too dangerous down there, all the debris. So we called in Navy divers who used surface supplied air, and they were more equipped to go into that debris and see what they could find, and they didn't find anything either. But there was another bridge collapse, the Fort Bridge. Remember when that went down, they were building a new bridge down there across at Fort Parkway? Well, yes, Bob.
I know you're Norwegian and you're a little strange, but how did you get into this operation first? What motivated you?
Well, I was always interested in the water. I was a Red Cross water safety instructor when I was 18, and I was a lifeguard at various pools. So when a friend of mine offered that I should join the water patrol, I thought, well, that sounds good. I like water activities. And then 4 years later, in '84, they organized the dive team. I said, well, that's for me. So I was 54 then, but I was in good shape, and I wanted to do that diving. So for 20 years, from 54 to 74, I dove for the sheriff's office. I was hoping that.
Did you ever dive in Lake Superior?
Yes, I did dive in Lake Superior off of the, what's that point up there, where the lighthouse is? Yeah, I was down there. I went down to 110 feet there. There's a wheelhouse from a ship down there. So when I got to 110 feet, then I got narcosis. That's like drinking too many martinis. You get lightheaded. So at 110 feet, I had to come back up to about 90. That's cold water.
You say that. See, I was born and raised in Bruce, so I know what Lake Superior is, Boulder County. And it says that the Lake Superior does not give up its bodies because it's so cold that they don't deteriorate.
Well, that may be true. That may be true. What do you think, Jim?
Still, after so much, the gas is still going to go in your body, you're going to float unless you tie yourself down. It's still good.
Yeah, that.
Preserve you though. You preserve your team.
So you look really good being dead.
Yes.
I have a question. When you dive around the locks and dams, I'm assuming they shut everything down. What's the procedure between a general procedure and how long it takes for them? Or don't they shut the locks and dams down when you're diving in that area?
Yeah, well, they'll notify us if any barges are coming. And they won't shut down the lock and dam, but they'll let us know a barge is coming. And when the barge comes by, the water goes up 18 inches and back down. And of course, we pull our divers out of the water if the barge is coming by. I did dive on another ship, the American, on Isle Royal. The bow sticks out of the water, but the stern is way down. And on that boat, before rascal divers got to it, there was a piano and clothing and stuff in the cabins. But divers don't sometimes pay attention to taking things off the dive boat. But there was a Model A Ford on there too.
Probably, I don't know.
Yeah, we took off from the shore in a 26-foot boat, and we had, first bit, we had good divers with us, and mud and marine radios and everything. But these two guys in a little rubber raft started on that 22-mile trip same time we did in a big boat. I don't know, I hope they made it.
Well, how many recovery dives have you done?
I've recovered about 15 bodies. And numerous cars and guns. We got a call one spring, you know where Cruisers Cove is out in Big Island, where all the boats pile up and party, they tie together and they party out there. We got a call one day that there was there was a car down there, just in the spring. Well, we hadn't gotten any report of a car down, so Bill Chandler and I went out. We found this white Jeep in Cruisers Cove. Bill was on one side and I was on the other. We thought, oh, there's a body in here. It wasn't a body, it was just his snowmobile suit was floating inside the car. Another day we got a call for an accident at Cruisers Cove. This fellow had a big 26-foot cruiser and he was trying to back into place so he could party. So he put his girlfriend at the wheel and he got down in the water to guide her back in. Well, she turned on the motor at the wrong time and sucked his leg right into the propeller. By the time we got there, he was trapped in the propeller and his friends were holding his head out of the water so he could breathe. Well, Cliff jumped in the water with the proper tool and took the propeller off. Then we got him in the rescue boat. He was conscious all the time we found him ashore. He ended up losing his foot, I believe. But he was lucky to survive because that propeller cut him right to the bone at the hip. We made another nice discovery in Excelsior Bay. Some guys thought there was a pickup truck down there, so we went down in Excelsior Bay. It was at 42 feet. I went down, I found the truck, and we tied a line to it. We pulled it up, put some airbags on it, pulled it up, and floated it over the shore. That car had been down there for 7 years. Well, I bet you anything, those guys reported that car stolen and collected insurance money. Now it came home to rest.
Roald,
Yes.
do you do dives after the sun goes down?
Well, it depends on when the drowning occurs. We got called out a lot of times at midnight. But that's when the partying goes on and people drown and do reckless things with boats. But we were called out all hours of the day. Get out of bed, all your gear's in the car, race to the scene. Bob and I always used to race to see who got there first. Because the first diver there would be the first one in. And luckily he'd be the one that found the victim. We had a thing going on.
Any more questions? One more, over there. You talked about that deputy that quit that one day, you know, you found a body. You never told me that you ever thought about quitting. Is this something you got used to? Was it harder in the early days?
I didn't like my first dive. My first training dive was about 30 feet in a little long lake. I didn't like it especially, but I got used to it. And I was good at rescue diving. After I found the first body, the rest of them didn't bother me. I was happy to do it because there was always somebody on shore waiting for you to bring that body in or to find it. And if it took 2 or 3 days, that was tough on the family. So we worked real hard at diving, whether it was middle of the day or middle of the night.
It must have been difficult for people that were waiting for the kin that you picked up.
Yes, they're on shore watching all of this. There's one article here about this student diver from St. Thomas. His parents came up from Chicago and they were waiting 2 days trying to find out what happened to them. And they were at the shore watching us go down, hoping that we would find them. But that's tough on the family. And this mother that was sitting on the shore at Lake Calhoun, for 2 days. That was hard on her. But, yes,
What do you know about the accident that happened this last month out of Lake Minnetonka where the little girl was in the car and they went through the ice? They're talking about the divers that went down. They were taking their lives in their hands because they had to be suited up in special suits. What's that all about?
well, the divers would have used the same suit as you see here. And then they have to have proper weights. The water under those bridges is probably only about 9 or 10 feet deep. But they have to go down there in the car in the dark of the night and try to figure out how to get somebody out.
But they were talking about the fact that it was very dangerous for these divers because they had to have special suits that they were taking their lives in their hands, and I don't know what that was about.
The original responders were firemen.
Oh,
They went in with no equipment.
there you go.
They really didn't take their life.
Well, yeah.
Because they could have,
As soon as you hit full water, you gasp and you drop. So, yeah, they were taking their own life.
And it was all because of alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we went on a dive once where the fellow was in a canoe late at night. He had to stand up in the canoe and take a whiz. That's a good thing to do after drinking. So he fell in and drowned. We went diving for a car under a bridge at St. Albans Day. We were just a practice dive, but we did find a shotgun and a revolver and I don't know what else that solved mysteries up in Duluth.
How many accidents or drownings would you say are alcohol related? Like half or?
I'd say 99%. Although I have an article here about a pleasure boat that went over the dam down at the Lock Dam and the one where all those big round pillars are. Well, they were members of Alcoholics Anonymous and they were just out having a boat ride. So they were all sober, but they lost power in their boat and their boat drifted into the dam and over the dam. They lost their boat. One passenger went over the dam and survived going through the dam. She had on a life jacket. We lost one of our boats there with all the radio equipment going over the dam. I was a standby diver that day. And there was a helicopter that came in and hovered right down there pulling people by rope out of this boat.
Did your family ever try to convince you to get out of it?
Carol knew that was hopeless. Even after the Florida accident, she knew I wasn't going to quit.
Would your wife object to you taking up flying now?
Not as long as I'm with Lou Martin.
Let's give them a hand. There are so many good stories locked in the hearts and minds of you guys out there, and we had to dig them out, and we dug out a good one today. You know, underwater usually means you can't make mortgage payments. This was a lot more exciting. Well, yes? Yeah, now next week we got a surprise guest. We're going to give you a little clue. What do you think his name was Lou. What do you think why did his mother call him that? His name was Lou. See you next week. Thank you.